Reading from the Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta, Book 2, Chapter 2, Text 217. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sadaika-rūpaṁ bahu-rūpam adbhutaṁ vimukti-saukhyāt pratiyogi sukham harer mahā-bhakti-vilāsa-mādhurī bharātmakaṁ tarkyam atad-vidāṁ. That extraordinary happiness is always one, yet it assumes many features. It stands in contrast to the happiness of impersonal liberation. Devotional happiness is made of the intense sweetness of sporting pastimes and the highest devotional service to the Lord. Persons unfamiliar with this pleasure cannot even imagine what it's like. Purport: the experience of bhakti includes Brahman realization, so the bhakti experience shares the non-dual nature of Satchidananda. But because bhakti is also a special opulence of the personality of Godhead, it is blissful in a way that merges into the Supreme. It is blissful in a way that merging into the Supreme can never be. In the happiness of impersonal liberation, one and unchanging, the liberated soul, you can fold that up and put it over there. The liberated soul attains a limit in which he thinks himself fully satisfied. The ecstasies of devotional service, however, in their many different features, never reach a point beyond which they cannot further increase, and so they destroy the limited feeling of self-satisfaction. In an apparently contradictory way, the bliss of devotion is uniformly Satchidananda, yet always increasing in manifold varieties, newer and newer, sweeter and sweeter at every moment. Can you get the tissue there for me? Yes. Such is the glory of the Lord's devotional service. It is irrepressibly attractive and therefore has the power to do what seems impossible. These contradictions coexisting in the bliss of bhakti, that it is always one, yet full of variety, limitless, yet constantly growing, can never be understood by those who have not tasted it for themselves. Om Jnana-timirandasya Garanjana Shalakaya Chaksuramilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Sapadantikam Vansha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasade Gaur Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So greetings from Govardhan, and I will leave for Vrindavan the day after tomorrow, spend a few days there, and then visa, I have to leave the country for a few days. I'll stay out a week. But it's beautiful here in Govardhan. These retreats going on with Burijan and Satchidananda. A lot of Vaishnavas, a lot of old friends are here. So again, this is Gop Kumar, and we're following his journey, and we observe certain qualities as he's experiencing higher and higher planetary systems. Of course, the main thing is he has that faith, that experience of the sweetness of bhakti that's embedded in his heart and impels him to not ultimately be satisfied in any place which doesn't satisfy that feeling. And we see along the way he's either materially or spiritually, he cannot be satisfied. His bhakti, and he gets all these positions. Now he's Lord Brahma. And I remember he was completely detached, disturbed by the management, almost perfectly satisfied by fear of death, and taking shelter of his mantra. Then he became dissatisfied that he'd not attained the fruit of his mantra, which is direct darshan and association of his Ishtadev, his desirable Lord, Madan Gopal. So in that type of kind of distress, and going into your heart, if you sincerely want a spiritual solution, God hears the voice in your heart. This is one of the main things in bhakti. God listening to the voice of our heart and trying to satisfy it when he sees some spark of humility, which can accept authority greater than his own material objectives and his own plan. So in that, somehow there's always an arrangement. And I think in one sense, our life in a way is also the Gop Kumar, not as profound in our devotion, but somehow there was something in our hearts that's impelled us even here to be all together and moving forward in bhakti. And God hears that voice and made the arrangements somehow or other. In Brahmaloka with all the great sages, they were talking about liberation, and when he questioned what is liberation, he was so simple he never heard about it. There was a conflict between two different perspectives of the absolute truth. There's one absolute truth. There's not Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan. There's one absolute truth which manifests in many, many ways. And according to the perspective, you have a path of realizing it. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavan iti Shabhyate. So that discussion goes on between the different scriptures which emphasize different aspects. Somehow the Bhakti Shastras win. They're declared that this is the real authority, and compassionately they begin to instruct Gop Kumar and us, making that distinction, because that the highest happiness is bhakti. We all want liberation. We're suffering in the world. If it's not sickness, it's relationship problems, it's financial problems, it's political problems. And we want to be free from that. And we want to have the joy of the no pain that we go through in different ways. So it's a great impetus. So this impersonal liberation. There's Gyan, but it's very attractive. But here, the Bhakti Shastras want to explain that there's really something that's much higher, and that's bhakti. And there's so many verses, and I already explained to you in a once-a-week class. I can't get into every purport, and they're long purports, and the subtleties of the point. But I'm going to go a little bit back, and first I'm going to start a little bit with the verse that Gail had problems with. There is no reason to be unhappy if someone attains self-realization without devotion to the Supreme Lord. The leaders of the saintly Vaishnavas consider such an occurrence very good. So the question is, why would they be happy if someone attains self-satisfaction without devotion to the Supreme Lord? It doesn't make sense. And the Vaishnavas consider it good. So Gail, in her subtle brain, I knew it when I was reading it. I always know the questions that there's that hair skip of logic that Gail's going to immediately point to. And sometimes I'm just going too fast to stop, sometimes I can't, but she always catches it. And frankly, I also didn't understand it, I have to say that. But all I can say is this is what their answer was. They shouldn't be unhappy because they've achieved nothing without. They've achieved, like Atmaram is a piece of straw compared to the prema of bhakti. So they should. I know it doesn't exactly coincide with the verse. At least I haven't figured out. But that's their answer. These devotees are not bothered if it's achieved without devotional service, because it shows the glories of devotional service. Because without devotional service, it's really not much. That thing that we desire is really not much. And then I'm just going to go to get up today's verse really quick. Then they keep on making their argument that when you perform your prescribed duties, there's a purity of the heart. But they say that also that's nothing compared to the fruit of prema in bhakti. And then they explain that, okay, but in personalism, if you really become detached and you approach God, then you can approach him with love because you're already detached from asking for anything. But they also say to that, that's good, but impersonalism doesn't lead to bhakti. It's just that if somehow you're a personalist and you become influenced by bhakti, when you come, then that it's not that impersonalism will lead to bhakti, but if you come from the platform of knowledge, you can come very quickly to the platform of purity. And then there's this concept that awareness of the self is impeded by the senses, that this material, it's impeded by the this, and it's a common conception that spiritual life must be the opposite of what's here. So here we see sensual activity, relationships, etc. So spiritual life must be the opposite of that. I heard one good argument by one scholar who said it doesn't work like that. And he said the opposite of poor is not no money, it's rich. So the opposite of material activity is spiritual activity. And it explains that because it contains limitless variety. And this idea is there. And then it says, impersonalism, because it tries to stop the mind, real happiness cannot exist there because the sense is no longer, what are you perceiving? So all these arguments were there, and then we're coming to today's point. And I think today, well, I told you these are very thick and deep, but stay with me. Here, it's making this verse. I should have spoke on it first because I just have to know. Yeah, so it goes to this point, and this point that we're discussing, that God must be complete, right? Must be unchanging. He must be complete. So if he's complete, then what does it mean that his happiness can increase unlimitedly? And here it says it almost seems a contradiction. And I brought up that quandary myself. Is God must have complete pleasure? And if he's not have complete pleasure, how can he be God? But if that pleasure can increase, how can he be God? So somehow or other on that realm, it's beyond time and space that all these things can exist at once. God can be completely full, and God can infinitely increase his happiness at the same time. And it's not that he doesn't have that, because it's not that he doesn't have that unlimited happiness, because in that realm beyond, it just is a little, let me see if I can explain this. God is beyond time and space. So any activity that happens is actually eternal. So it's a different realm. So all these things are existing internally. What's existing eternally, that he's the limit of happiness. What exists eternally is when that happiness increases, that also exists eternally. And when it increases again, it also exists eternally. So it's a little bit confusing, but the point that's being made here is that this nature of God, and this is, Prabhupada would explain this in that story of the Brahmin, the simple man going to see God, and he meets the Brahmin. He tells him, I'm going to see God. And the Brahmin says, well, ask him when I'll be liberated. And then he sees a cobbler. And that's like the lowest class, because, in India, you take off your shoes because the shoes are touching everything. So the cobbler who deals with that is called the mochi wala. It's one of the lowest castes. And he asked that cobbler, when I'll be liberated. I'm going to see God. The cobbler said, ask him when I'll be liberated. To make a long story short, the answer he got is the cobbler will go back in this lifetime, and the Brahmin in many, many lifetimes. And when he heard that answer, the man who went to see God, he was very, very puzzled. He said, how's that possible? Because the Brahmins said karma, nipano, vipro, mantra, tantra, vishar. They do all these rituals, and the cobbler is doing this work. He says the answer will become evident when they ask what I was doing, and you tell them that I was putting an elephant through the eye of a needle. So when he asked the Brahmin, you take many, many births. He said, how's that possible? I'm doing all my karma, etc. He said, by the way, what was God doing? He said he was putting an elephant through the eye of a needle. Oh, he said, that's impossible. But when he asked the cobbler couldn't believe he was going to be liberated in this life. When the cobbler inquired, well, what happened when you saw God? He was putting a elephant through the eye of a needle. And he said, wonderful. He said, how do you believe this? And he said, just look at that tree. A little banyan seed can produce, within that is a forest. one tree will grow, another tree will grow. So Prabhupada said, Rupa Goswami said, without accepting the inconceivable power of God, you don't understand God. That's the very definition of God. So how can there be him limited from being two things at once, being completely unchanging and having that increase and never reaching a point beyond which they can't further increase. So the Bhakti Shastras are explaining these points probably better than I can right now. Sadaika-rūpaṁ savishnu atmanas tatasva bhaktir janayat yanukshanam vichitta-madhurya satam navam vyasa-puja durvitarkaya. Although Lord Vishnu is always one and unchanging, at every moment he brings forth hundreds of newer and newer varieties of transcendental charm, both in himself and in his devotional service. He does this by his personal energy inconceivable to himself. So his devotional service increases, his own charm increases. So if his charm increases, then the same question was, before his charm increases, how could he have been God? But the answer is, when his charm increases, that's also an eternal activity. So it's somehow all existing simultaneously. And how is it possible? Because it's God. So now that this point is very important to understand. And that's the first verse of the Sri Upanishads, Om Purnam Idam Purnam. The Supreme Personality of God is perfect, is complete, and although so many units emanate from him, he remains the complete balance. That's another. If something comes from something, it becomes less, but no. It comes from it, but it's not depleted. So text 218 through 220 established beyond a doubt that although the Supreme Lord is the personal embodiment of the absolute truth, is unchanging in his Satchidananda existence, he and his activities and his devotees and theirs are full of variety that is real, not created by illusion. Non-devotees can never discuss this sublime truth by conjecture. They can never understand the Lord's pastimes with his devotees. So this should be some type of experience from us in some way, that when we hear faithfully, we can have a realization or experience of a realization and understanding of something that was beyond our personal intellectual capacity. When I was teaching those last chapters in the CC and that point was made, even a sober man of the highest scholarship can't understand this, but if you hear faithfully, you can. And by studying it with devotees, it becomes a reality. And maybe not even the intellect, but in terms of your experience. So they're making these points. The manifold charm, sweeter than the sweetest, is found in Sri Vishnu's supremacy as Parabrahman and his lordship over all that be. His charm displays the very limit of his most excellent compassion towards his devotees. For them, his charm lifts to the highest stage of their experience of deep oceans of sweet ecstasy that ridicules the pleasure derived from realization of the impersonal Brahman. And, that's there in Bhakti-rasa-mrta Sindhu. If you can't compare material pleasure to the realization of Brahman. But if you multiply that, and the number given was infinity, it will not equal a drop of the nectar of devotion, of the ocean of the nectar, of the bhakti-rasa-mrita sindhu. And how is that possible? Because it's God. So why should his pleasure have any limit? So here it's explained that way. Para-brahmyam madhur-madhuram parameshwar. Right. Para-brahman madhura-madhuram parameshan chatad. I can't even. Anyway, his absolute authority of Madhura Anand, the flood of intense bliss, the ultimate stage. Purport: this is the difference between the impersonal feature and the personality of Godhead, between liberated impersonalists and pure devotees of the Lord. This is the difference between the impersonal Supreme and the personality of Godhead, between liberated impersonalists and pure devotees of the Lord, between liberation and devotional service. Lord Vishnu is the original Brahman, the one without a second, but his attractive qualities are evolving constantly with ever new freshness. He is the Supreme Person, the controller of everything that exists. His personal beauty and wonderful playful activities are universally attractive. It's an incredible concept, but it's reasonable once you accept the premise of God that there's nothing he cannot do. And it's such a beautiful concept that God's pleasure is always increasing. So therefore the question comes, if God has everything, how can we give God pleasure? We can increase God's pleasure. That's the wonder of bhakti. We can increase God's pleasure by our own bhakti. And it doesn't mean he was lacking anything. So it's a wonderful concept. And one more verse about that. The Lord expands abundant variety to enrich his devotees forever with enjoyment in these exuberant waves of sweet ecstasy. And just as, even though he is devoid of every kind of material quality, there is firm and constant variety in him. So in his devotees, there is a strong and varied and wonderful experience in all the functions of the senses. And there was one verse before too, that even if someone becomes inert, a powerful experience, does that mean he's enjoying less because the pleasure is not pervading within his senses? No, he has internal senses. And in those internal senses, each of the sense can have the experience of all the senses. And we have that to a limited degree. When we say someone's name, we may see him. When, when we smell someone, we may see him too. Why does the Supreme Lord expand the diverseness of his personality? He does so for the pleasure of his devotees. Eko bahu sham, the one becomes many. Nityo nityanam, the one eternal becomes many eternals. Chaitanas chaitananam, the one life force becomes many life forces. Eko bahunam yo, but the one tries to satisfy the many. And it's enticing. Why don't we all just surrender to Krishna and experience this instead of what we're doing in the material world? The boatman story, pulling up the anchor. We're not moving. Got to surrender. Can't surrender in the past. You can't surrender in the future. You have to surrender now. Woo! That is tough. But that's the door to bhakti. The Lord's attractive qualities expand infinitely, giving the devotee, who are equally spiritual beings, many different kinds of activities to serve him by activities like hearing and chanting. So this is the beauty. God's pleasure is love. and that comes from his devotees. So if God's pleasure is increasing, it's coming from our devotion. So we're also experiencing the same thing. This spiritual variety in devotional service expands perpetually with no beginning or end. It manifests itself in the Lord and his devotees, enhancing their beauty, effulgence, and enjoyment, and enlivening and empowering their senses. So we see one becomes happy, becomes more beautiful, and as is happy, that's the background of God wanting to become his own devotee. Because when Krishna sees Radharani, he becomes happier. When he becomes happy, he becomes more beautiful. When he becomes more beautiful, she becomes more happy, and she becomes more beautiful. And when she becomes more beautiful, he becomes... So it just never ends. We just can't fit it in the box of our experience of how the laws of nature restrict and confine and move things. But as that's our only experience, it's inconceivable. So you have to have some experience of that. Like a young girl at 3 years old, she doesn't have the capacity to experience what she can at 17. Because fire is always hot, it can never become cold. So how can the supreme truth, eternal and changeless one, paradoxically exhibit so much diversity? So it seems paradoxical. It's changeless, the Supreme Lord. Then how can it change? How can it have diversity? How can it continually change? Well, just like I say, for God God's enjoyment is love, and love comes from outside of him. But there's nothing outside of God. This is my own statement. So within God, there must be something outside of him for the purpose of giving him love. So I think this is the main difference philosophically between impersonalists and devotees. The devotees consider that God has inconceivable potency. The impersonalists, somehow or other, analyze God according to the laws of the laws of the material world, and therefore they can't see how there can be any distinction in him, because then he's changing. So something like that. The second half of this verse answers the doubt. Although the Supreme Lord is untouched by material dualities, his transcendental nature creates in him profuse diversity, which constantly expands, unlimited by time and space. Although the Lord, the Supreme Brahman, is nivashesh, free from duality, he displays infinite variety by appearing as innumerable avatars, as the supersoul in every heart, and also in his limited expansions, the jivas in the material energy. He also expands the countless forms of devotional service, chanting and hearing about him, seeing him, conversing with him, embracing him, and these completely enchant his devotees with endless varieties of pleasure, new and newer at every moment. One quality of prema is apurvata. Apurvata means not before. So every time the eternal parikas, associates of Krishna, see him, never before. Never before. It's the same person, but never before. Always more beautiful, always more expanding. And it makes so much sense. Because if there is a God which has nothing's above him, and he can do whatever he wants, why won't he constantly increase his own pleasure? And never be lacking of it at the same time. All glories to Jayadvaita Maharaj for editing this, because it's one of the first things I can actually read, and I feel like it's digestible to people without, by employing his personal energies, the Lord expands himself with ever fresh variety to give his devotees special happiness, far exceeding the happiness of realizing the self as one with him. Because it's limited, because it's unchanging. He similarly offers an infinite variety of engagement for the external and internal senses of the devotees to add spice to the transcendental pleasure. Why not, if it's God? Thus, in spiritual life, there is non-difference within difference, difference within non-difference. Without a doubt, the happiness of liberation is paltry compared to the supreme happiness of devotional service. We need not elaborate on this point any further. So why am I not experiencing this immediately after being in the material world since time immemorial? So now I've come to bhakti in a short distance, and I have to be utsaha, nistya. You have to be a little patient to understand this wonderful thing. Nityaishvaryo, nityanana, vishesho, nitya shriko, nitya britya, prasanga, nityo pastir, nitya loke, vatu tvam, nitya brahma-rūpaṁ Krishna. May Krishna protect you. His opulent power is eternal, and eternal are his infinite varieties, and his beauty, and his worship, and his companionship with his servants. He is the personal form of the eternal absolute, the one without a second, who lives in the eternal world. May Krishna protect you. With his infinite varieties are eternal. I just said that. So even though they're expanding, they're eternal. So it means they're always existing. But at the same time, well, there's God. It's God. He has inconceivable potency. And this is just the point where these questions of origin, I read in the commentaries of the Yoga Sutra, Professor Bryant's, he said, most schools of thought don't discuss origins. They don't discuss origin. And why don't they discuss origin? Because where does it begin? It begins in a realm without time. So how can you quantify when it happened? Bhaktivinoda Thakur said these words in terms of origin, like when. He said you can't understand them for the dirt of words. So I have this idea and this concept that God, by definition, can't be under time, can't be under space, it can be nothing greater than him. So by definition, his whole realm, his existence, can't be quantified by us and limited by us. So these are the Bhakti Shastras. They're so fired up about Bhakti and they're explaining it. In response to Gopkumar's inquiry, the Bhakti Shastras have described the glories of the personality of God as devotional service. They now conclude their instructions by ecstatically offering Gopkumar their blessings. The impersonal, undifferentiated Brahman is actually a feature of the Supreme Lord, because the personality of God is manifest in all attractive form. He is the concentrated essence of the Supreme. His body is the Supreme Brahman. Thus, although he is the eternal, unchanging Supreme, he also has eternal opulences, wonderful qualities that never fail him. Since he is the eternal and infallible Godhead, his many varieties of beauty, splendor, and charm are eternal, and his qualities and activities are eternal as well. Like there's a time where Radharani first met Krishna. That's a fact. But can you say there was ever a time where They didn't have their relationship either, so both must exist. Since his consort, Lakshmi, is also eternal because she always resides in his chest. And as one further aspect of his eternal opulence, he always enjoys the sublime association of his devoted servants. This means that not only the Lord's attendants in Vaikuntha, but even his aspiring devotees in the material world are eternal, eternally graced by his mercy. They have no reason ever to fear destruction. Well, that's nice. We need a little solace here. This is affirmed by the Lord himself in Bhagavad Gita. Kuntiya pratijanahi nabhakta name bhakta, O son of Kunti, declare it boldly that my devotees never perishes. The Lord's worship, the process of devotional service, also eternal. Mahā-bhakti-vilāsa-mādhurī pratyavayo navidyate swalpam apyasya. There's no fear, because whatever you do is there eternally to Krishna. You never lose that amount of service that you've given. The Lord's word, generally, I don't generally read purports, but this is where I'm at usually. But the activities in the practice of bhakti, hearing, chanting, and so on, are not merely functions of the material senses, but are manifestations of the Lord's direct mercy upon each sensory function. This will explain more fully on. So now we can also appreciate Sanatana Goswami writing this book, manifesting this book, and covering all the tattvas. So maybe unlike Gopkumar in one sense, because he doesn't have knowledge, he goes by trial and error. When you have knowledge, you can go directly. So that's the purpose of this, to clear any doubts. Because without faith, you can't move forward. So doubts impede us. The Bhakti Shastras offers Gopkumar their blessings, that Krishna, whose abode in the spiritual world is eternal, may protect him, especially from obstacles to devotional service, such as the distraction by the desire to be liberated. The janam, the danam, the sundarim, kavitam, va jagadishika, mama jamini jama ishvari. But I don't want anything. I only want your devotional service, birth after birth. Not even desiring liberation. And when devotees come to that platform, they just want bhakti. Mahā-rasa, one or two more verses. Mahā-rasesmin nabudhai prayujyate sukham karkasha tarka-kantakam tatapi nirvana rata pravrittaye navina bhakta pramudhe pradarshitam. In this very gentle, supreme nectar of devotional service, the intelligent finds no use for harsh and thorn-like logic. Still, we have spoken this discourse to induce those who are attached to impersonal liberation to begin devotional service, and it was spoken to give pleasure to the neophyte devotees. They basically said, we don't like to argue. We just want to be absorbed in Rupa Raghunath. We don't want to give all this logic and argument and convincing, but somehow to clear your doubts, we have to explain these things. But this is not our interest. It's not my interest either. It's not our interest. Our interest is just glorifying Krishna, not dissecting the material world, but using the four forms of evidence: direct perception, logic, the opinions of reliable authorities, and analogy, The Bhakti Shastras give many more proofs of the superiority of bhakti over moksha, but here they present only a small sample of the arguments. The Bhakti Shastras refrain from giving more because cold-hearted, critical philosophy disturbs like a thorn one's relishing the sublime rasas of devotional service. Disturbs like a thorn. So, intelligent devotees avoid overindulgence in philosophical debates. Narada Bhakti Sutra is one of the qualities it gives a devotee. He doesn't argue. Of course, you have to, there's a certain constructive criticism, there's a certain defense of faith, but it's not his desire. And most argument is born of false ego. If someone tells us we're wrong, we feel that there's a dominance over us and we have to fight it. It's made us less. It's made the person more. We can't stand to be controlled because controlling is our mechanism to move objects in front of us for our enjoyment. And we want power. So it's so ingrained. With a Vaishnava, he doesn't mind. I try to practice this sometimes. Swallow your ego, don't argue. The person thinks he won. Forget it. But for the benefit of impersonalists and neophyte devotees, the Bhakti Shastras have taken the trouble to demonstrate by logic the superiority of bhakti. They have presented their arguments to induce persons attracted to self-annihilation of merging into the Supreme to turn instead to the process of bhakti. Without strong logical proofs, impersonalists will never be convinced to give up aspiring for liberation. Thus, following the logic given in Bṛhad-bhāgavatāmṛta 1:15-34 of removing one thorn with another, kantakam katakaneva, the Bhakti Shastra have used a sharp thorn of logic to remove the thorn of the desire for liberation, which pierces the hearts of the impersonalists. This discourse also helps neophyte Vaishnavas whose faith is not fixed. By hearing how much greater than moksha is bhakti, their hearts become filled with joy. And their hearts thus freed from thorns of doubt, they become fit to receive the eternal treasure of pure devotion. If you have indeed realized the pettiness of liberation and want to attain the treasure of firm faith in pure devotional service to the Lord, then simply worship your transcendental mantra. And please hear this great secret, which is pleasing to the heart. That's a little bit deeper. Anyway, this was a lot today, but Jamuna Jaya, you extracted any nectar from this thorn-like logic?
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for class. Yeah, there was a lot today. I was like writing and writing and writing. But I really loved the...
Are you in Yoga Maya now?
Yes, Maharaj. Yeah. I stopped here on the way. I'm headed up to my job in the hospital for the kids, but so I stopped here so I can listen to class before I keep going. So this is it's
okay.
Yoga Maya. But I really loved all the talk of God's pleasure ever increasing. But even though it's ever increasing, it doesn't mean anything. We can increase his pleasure. And I was thinking it's the ultimate answer to the question, what do you get the guy who is everything? You know, he is everything, but we can increase it. And the other thing I was thinking when you said that
he wouldn't have everything if we couldn't increase it.
He would increase it. Yeah. Such a great way to think about it. And I was thinking about the thing about the beauty. That's why expectant mothers look so beautiful. It is because it's the love. You see them and they, we say they're glowing. It seems cliche, but they actually are. So when I was thinking about the thing, it was like the love makes one beautiful, like Krishna becomes more beautiful with Radharani. So thank you, Maharaj. Beautiful.
Okay, great. And have a nice day today. And thank you
Thank
for
you.
always coming on the classes.
Thank
These
you,
are my
Maharaj.
this is my all-star team here. These are the people that are coming. Okay, Gail, you get a shot. Go ahead, I'm ready. I'm bracing myself.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. And thank you for that validation, letting everybody know I'm not crazy. But and of course I'm still in the same spot, but that's okay. I can move on. Um, yeah, I do have a couple of comments and a question. Well, for one thing, I thought it was such a great statement when you said that, you know, in illustrating the inconceivability of Krishna, that within God there must be something outside of God, in order for him to experience love. I thought that was such a cool statement. Within God, there must be something outside of God. It was like, you know.
Sometimes, Gail, I don't know. Sometimes I come up with something.
Yeah, and another nice statement too was Krishna is always the same person, yet is never before a Purvata. It's just another nice statement to
Well,
illustrate
that's
his
rasa
beauty.
theory, that
Yeah.
every time the associates see God, Chatmakara, it's like astounding, and a Purvata, they never seen it before. Yeah, okay, good.
Yeah, just one question though, Maharaj, that when you say we can experience what's beyond our intellectual capacity by faithful hearing.
Yeah.
So how would you describe the nature of that faithful hearing? Because
Sarvasya.
it's not just
Faithful
okay,
hearing
I
means
believe it
I accept this as true.
even though I don't understand it.
Well, not, well,
Because
someone's speaking, but you have faith in the Shastras. You may not understand it, but I accept it as true. And you hear it, and by hearing it, you worship it, you respect it, and then somehow or other, Savasya Chaham Hidisani Vishto Matasmitir Gyanam Apohanam Cha. I'm situated in everyone's heart. From me comes remembrance, forgetfulness, and knowledge. Shrindvata Swa Kata Krishna, Punya Shravana Kirtana, Hidyantasto Yabadani, Vidinoti Siritsatam. God's our well wisher. So it comes from Him.
yeah,
Realization.
I guess I just want to highlight what seemed to be the point that faithful hearing does not necessarily imply understanding what you're hearing.
You may understand, you may not, but you accept it as true.
Yeah, right. Okay, great. Thank you.
Gail, that was an easy one, huh? Thank you. Sometimes you're
Give
merciful.
me a break. And I want
Okay.
you to know, Maharaj, that what you call hairline skips of logic, it never feels like that to me. Otherwise, I wouldn't even, catch it.
I know, but I'm reading it and I realize, well, this one should, it was a little obvious, but sometimes you get the real hair, really tiny point. And I realized I was speaking, I like to make logical points, and I get, oh my God, I jumped this much. And then you'll go, what about that point? Okay.
Thanks, Maharaj.
Anybody else like to say hello?
Hare Krishna,
Active.
Gurudev. Yavat Sundari.
Oh, Haribo, do you have water in your city there? Are
Yes, we
they?
live in Kish Island, Maharaj. We live in this near the sea. Yeah, we don't have a
Oh,
problem.
no, you're in the island of Kish, right?
Yes, yeah, I'm in the island of Kish. We
But
don't
is
have
there a
problem.
problem in Tehran that they're running out of water, or is that
Yeah, there is
propaganda?
a bit, not running out of the water, but because there is no rain, the pollution is too much, and now they closed down some schools and things to give a bit of, because there isn't any, but the pollution is very high, yeah.
Okay, okay,
So we are just praying for the rain, Maharaj.
okay. Well, they should allow Harinam. Why don't you organize a Harinam Kirtan?
Yeah, we do actually with the group, with the Yatra of Tehran. We try to do
Wow,
that.
how wonderful. Okay.
Yeah, we
Anybody,
want your mercy as
anybody else?
well. Thank you very much, Maharaj. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Anybody else like to say hello?
Hello, Maharaj. This is Denny.
Hey,
Just
nice to
wanted
hear
to
from
thank you
you.
for the class.
Wow. Where are you now? In your
Very
truck?
loud in here today, so it's hard to talk.
Where are you?
I'm at work right now
What's your
in
work?
Ohio. Work at a paper mill.
Okay. Okay. Nice. Thanks for coming on class. And we'll speak in another week or so. I'll give you a message, okay?
Yeah, thank you, Maharaj.
Okay, Haribo.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Hare Krishna Maharaj.
Surya Radhika here.
There it is, the divine couple.
Not
Have you recovered from the wedding?
yet. Maharaj. It was so
No.
stressful before the wedding. We need 1 month of rest.
It was your day. What are you talking about?
Yeah,
Stress?
yeah. It was beautiful. Yeah. We enjoyed it, but
Okay.
it was so much work.
What was the feast?
The feast. It was so many stuff, and it was nice. It's actually Gopal Prabhu made it, and he did a really good job. And everyone was calling us and saying it was really nice food and prasadam. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Were there tables or people sit down on the floor or how does it work?
Oh no, tables.
Yes, table
Yeah,
Maharaj.
yeah.
You had
I
to
will
rent it.
share pictures with you later when I
Come
get
on.
them.
Why me? Everyone wants to see.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, share it with me. Okay. And where
Nice.
you living?
Where are we living in
We're
Gainesville?
moved into the new house, Maharaj, in Gainesville.
You own the house.
Yes,
Yeah,
Maharaj.
Look at this. Well,
yeah.
certain words we can only use Yiddish. What a mensch. That's like the
Thank you,
highest.
Maharaj.
That's like the highest compliment. Yeah, Sri Radhika.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you,
Haribo.
Maharaj.
Thank you,
Hare
Maharaj.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. Haribo. Wow, Yoga Maya Shakti in the jail like Vasudeva and Devaki. Okay, Haribo. Anybody else say hello?
Hare Krishna, Garaj. It's all going to
And Braja, thank you for class.
class.
Okay, wow. Yeah, December 19th. I really want everybody to come to that program.
Yes,
Yeah.
we'll be there for Prime Prayojana.
Yeah, he's quite a scholar. I mean,
Yeah,
he's in
we'll be
that
there.
world. He just lives in that world of Shastra, so it's a good opportunity.
Yeah, we're looking
Yeah,
forward to it. Thank you.
Yeah,
we'll be there.
okay. Haribo. And then
Haribo.
after that, we'll see you here.
Yes,
Yeah.
can't wait.
Wow. Okay, Haribo.
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 Okay. Anybody else? Say hello.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, Kalachanji here.
Hey, it's so nice to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very
Thanks
good.
for class. Hare Krishna.
Haribo. Okay. I'll look at the list now and thank every single person for coming. I see everyone's name. Okay. Haribo.